On the night before her 22nd birthday in November of 1992, Angela Brosso went out for a bike ride near a canal in Phoenix, Arizona. She never returned home. The following day, her body was found decapitated with grisly injuries. Over a week later, her head was discovered in the canal. 10 months went by when 17-year-old Melanie Bernas was reported missing after she never returned from a bike ride. Melanie's body was found the following day in the canal. The Phoenix Canal murders haunted Arizona for years, but the community was left without answers. Matching DNA linked the two horrific murders, but the killer was able to hide in plain sight for decades, according to Sergeant Troy Hillman, who took up this cold case years later. He assembled an all-star team, and together they were able to track down the killer. Hillman joins Forbes True Crime to discuss his new book, Chasing Down the Zombie Hunter, which details his time trying to solve this cold case. Hi everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis, the host of Forbes True Crime. Joining me now is Sergeant Troy Hillman, author of Chasing Down the Zombie Hunter. Sergeant Hillman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You wrote a book about what you described as your case, this case that was your entire world for years. But before you were even on that case, before you were solving cold cases or even a police officer, you were a certified public accountant. And you were a pretty good one. You won a silver medal for the Uniform Certified Public Accountant Examination. You were also a top candidate in the entire country. But you decided to make a complete career 180 and join law enforcement. Talk to us about that decision.
One of the toughest decisions of my life because I'd sunk so much time and energy and money into a degree in accounting. And then had a great opportunity with an international CPA firm in Chicago. Things were going great, but it just was not my calling. There's a lot of good accountants, CPAs out there, but again, this is not what I wanted to do the rest of my life. I had a passion for following clues, and I wanted to become a detective ultimately.
And in your book, you note that you even had a brochure for the police department in your bag, and you would look at it, and that would kind of give you a rush. You were excellent at accounting, but talk to us about how those CPA skills were transferable to make you a good detective.
CPAs are known to be very, very organized people and very much honed in attention to detail. And basically, that is the essence of cold case because you're kind of behind the line, so to speak, to begin with, because it's sometimes decades old. Another investigator has worked on it, and sometimes three or four or five investigators have looked at it. So you really need to pour in and say, what did we miss? How can we apply new technologies and just kind of a fresh set of eyes on it? But those CPA skills definitely played a part, and also in organizing the team because I was the team leader as the sergeant and then looking for my passionate detectives to kind of help them.
I see above your shoulder you have a Cold Cases Matter poster, and I'm curious, talk to us about the differences between solving and working a cold case versus a case that is perhaps more fresh, perhaps has more media attention. What are the differences there?
You can work on a cold case for years and basically have no arrest to show, which is very frustrating. But you've driven it forward as far as you can, and that's all really you can tell the family and loved ones is, hey, we've done everything we can with the current technology. But I always tell them never give up. There always is hope. There's technology. There's forensic investigative genetic genealogy, which we used, which was groundbreaking. So there's all kinds of things, but it is tough. It's not as fast paced as a regular homicide investigation, but it's just kind of tedious looking at the details and really trying to isolate again what we missed and what's available to do now.
I now want to get into the case that you write about in your book, and it seems like this case really consumed you for years. It's the Phoenix Canal murders, and these were killings that haunted the Arizona community for years. Two young women, Angela Brosso and Melanie Bernas, were murdered less than a year apart from each other in the early 90s while biking near the canal. And the details of these murders really are just so grisly. Decades went by without these cases being solved, and this is what you wrote in your book. Both cases went cold, detectives retired, and the public eventually forgot about the victims. We did not. How hard is that going to work every day? And like you said, sometimes there's no arrest, but you're just chipping away at this, working at it for years, and there's really no result until there is one.
Yeah, this was a 3.5 year journey. That there were times when I think we all looked at each other like, "Well, we may not solve this. He could be in a mental institution. He could be dead." Because the prevailing opinion it was that he was deceased because he had been in the DNA system in the national database since the late '90s, early 2000s, and never hit. So that we kind of were deemed a little bit maybe crazy for because we were trying to balance 2,500 other cold cases, and we couldn't just stop working those. So we had to balance working this as a team and then those other cases and all that comes with those cases. So it was challenging to say the least.
And what about this case made it your case? The one that you just couldn't stop thinking about, the one that, it seemed like reading your book, I mean, every breath you were thinking about this case. You were juggling being a new father, you were juggling so much in life, but you just were working on this, it seemed nonstop.
I think that the clues he left us clues, and there was symbolism in the murders, and I just was obsessed by what those he was trying to tell us because he was definitely, like I said, there was heavy symbolism. There was stuff in the tunnels. There was water. There was the beheading. There were religious things. So I was really, and my detectives were trying to focus on exactly what he was telling us.
And at one point, you visit the crime scenes, and it's obviously years later, and you have the crime scene photos. You're at the crime scene, just, letting that feeling sink in, and you're just writing all these questions down that you have. It reminded me of being a journalist. I mean, when I have an interview, I have pages and pages of questions that I write down. Talk to us about that process of just, putting pen to paper.
Well, it's one thing to look at photos, and photos are the photos we had were they did the best job they could back in the early '90s, but they were 35 millimeter, and they were all over the place. So it was really hard to make sense of and kind of get a mental. And I'm a very detailed. A lot of cops are very visual creatures, so we wanted to get I wanted to get an idea of what the scene looked like, and so being out there was chilling, but it kind of was necessary. So there were all these questions about how much time he spent in the tunnel, how exactly he got away with this. I think that's the number one question, and it's still remaining. Is to all how he spent so much time with these victims and then got away with it.
And there's still so many questions that we'll get to later, but you assembled this rock star cold case team to help you solve this case. And the DNA expert that you had on your team, her name was Kelly, she told you that this was going to come down to the DNA. And so your team, every time you have a suspect, you get their DNA, you give it to Kelly, and you wait. And then you get the call from Kelly each time. This isn't the guy. This isn't the guy. This isn't the guy. To one point, one of the officers on your team so thought that he had the guy that he had to take off the rest of the day for work because he thought this was the guy and it wasn't so. You wrote "never give up" on the board to kind of boost morale on your team. How did you never give up? How did you keep going in those moments?
Every, like you said, every member of the team had their kind of their guy that they thought did it. And then there were ups and downs and constant. The lab was, they were trying to keep up with the voluminous request for regular homicide in addition to what we were submitting in the rest of the department. So they were working. But yeah, it was just, it was hard, but what my job as the team leader was to kind of keep everybody focused and keep plodding along. But we were really just sifting through names. We had help, and we met the VDOC Society out of Philadelphia, and they were a tremendous help, kind of pointing us and keeping us, helping us with a serial killer investigation, which we did not have the proper training for.
And that was one of the turning points I felt in solving this case for your team. I felt that there were two turning points in this. I mean, I had faith that your team was going to solve this from the beginning, but it seemed like there were two moments that really jump started this for you all and put you on a faster track. And one of them was you met a profiler, Richard Walter, and he told you the killer was in the files. Talk to us about that moment because there were a lot of files.
Yeah, Richard was a very brilliant yet eccentric fellow, but kind of took us under his wing. And the VOC Society was very open with us. So, yeah, they said in these type of cases, you're looking for a Bundy, you're looking for a Dahmer, and 95 to 97% chance that he's in your files. So, we honed in. We did another deep dive on the files, but everybody in the files was pretty much creepy. We call it the creepy canal list, and just trying to sift through all those. And it wasn't easy because a lot of them either had moved out of state. We had to find them. We had to work with local law enforcement, say it be Pennsylvania or Ohio, and then they have a different set of rules to get DNA. So that was tough. It would take a lot of time to get a person's DNA on a 20-year-old cold case.
And I could only imagine, I mean, the mental toll that takes going through the creepy canal list and talking to people who, maybe weren't serial killers, but still committed crimes in the past, were just, interesting characters to say the least. But what is different about hunting a serial killer versus just a different type of criminal?
I think, particularly with our guy, and what the profiler indicated was extremely intelligent, albeit maybe unorganized at times. But it was obviously he was very good at, for lack of a better word, his craft because he had eluded the police for years, if not decades. And so that is something that the average killer typically leaves more clues or does kind of screws up, whereas this individual never managed to get into the federal DNA database. So he was sly and he was hiding in plain sight.
He was hiding in plain sight, and the second turning point came from a forensic genealogist. And I'm at Forbes. I love talking about money, and this was an expense that the team was kind of pondering a bit. It was $750. And I had to reread that for a second because the way that you had to move this up the chain, I thought it was $750,000. It was $750. And there was a lot of back and forth. Should we do it? Should we not? And what this forensic genealogist could do is potentially get the surname of your killer. Talk to us about deciding, hey, or not you personally deciding, but you bringing it up the ladder to get that expense approved. And that ultimately really helped solve this case.
Well, government is not known for its nimbleness and ability to get things approved quickly. And I'd been a sergeant for over 17 years, and I knew that if it was kind of on the house, it may have been approved quicker, regardless of the price tag. But yeah, for $750, we almost took up a collection. We had a volunteer wanting to write a check. We had all kinds of things and ways to pay for it. But again, it's a very delicate process, and it's one where we knew we needed the upper chain of command's approval, and they needed some reassurance. Cold case is one of those innovative areas where we kind of push the envelope, and sometimes it just takes a lot of convincing of, hey, there's nothing to lose. Other than the spec and the budget of the city of Phoenix is $750. Yeah, there's absolutely nothing. We're not giving her any information. She's not doing anything other than looking at a sequence of numbers, and somehow kind of blows me away to this day. She comes up with a surname. She's brilliant, and I mean
And
Dr.
so
Kelly.
and the
Sorry.
surname was M, and you were working one end of the alphabet, another detective was working the other end of the alphabet. So this kind of helped you get to the M's a little bit faster. You get to the file of Brian Miller. He's in the files like Richard Walter said he was going to be. There was a 95% chance he was going to be there. talk to us about the moment you're reading that, because it seemed like, you had some alarms going off in your head reading that file.
Yeah, when we got the name, basically, I asked I had an organizer detective who's phenomenal who went down to the basement and he pulled and he goes, "Here you go. There's 5 files of Miller." And I started kind of combing through them, shut my office door. I really didn't want to be disturbed. And then I ran across Brian Patrick Miller's file, and it was shocking, to say the least.
It was shocking. You and your team just have this ruse and a Chili's to try to extract his DNA. And what was it like seeing him working on this case, thinking, hey, I think there's a really strong possibility this could be our guy. We need to get his DNA. You see him, he doesn't exactly, as you say, look like Rambo. In that moment, what are you thinking?
Yeah, we had all the while kind of been hunting or chasing a somebody from the military, a kind of a military badass, and he did not fit that. He was average height, just didn't really have any military background, didn't have anything that we saw where he could be. Back when he reversed the clock, he would have done it in his early 20s. He was this scrawny little guy, kind of a nerdy looking fellow, and to be able to overcome two athletic women was kind of baffling. But it was eerie because everything was pointing to him, and there were just so many things in his social media and so many things that were pointing to him, but we had been burned so many times by the DNA of told it's not him, it's not him. So we were excited, but we were trying to temper that excitement a little bit. So
The nature of these crimes were so brutal. One of the women was decapitated. It was just heinous. And you're looking at Brian Patrick Miller once he gets into custody. You write in your book, you said just now that he's not this military badass that you built up in your head. What was that like? Were you ever thinking, maybe I have some doubts here because this doesn't square with the guy I had in my head for so long?
yeah, absolutely, but DNA doesn't lie, and that again, that's what Kelly told us is that the proof's going to be with the DNA. So, but yeah, to look at them and it didn't really line up completely.
And you wrote out at the end of the book all the questions that you still have. And there's a lot of questions that you still have about this case. To you, what is the biggest one that's left unanswered?
Um, I was fascinated again by the the symbolism, the clues, again, what he was trying to tell us, the cross, the dots. Obviously, and the biggest one for me is who are the other victims, and give us a list of, because we know he's good for many more. List them out and get right with things. So I hope someday he does that.
How many more victims do you think that Brian Patrick Miller had? Because he was found guilty of killing Angela Brosso and Melanie Bernas. But you write in the book that you believed he had other victims, including one young girl. But in this case, he was only found guilty of killing those two women. But how many more victims do you think that he had?
Well, there were, I don't know, over between Arizona and Washington. There was one survivor, and then there was actually two survivors in Washington, and then we had some people come forward that were believed they were attacked by him along the canal around the same time as our murders. So I would say four plus murders, and then several other attacks where he was not able to kill them.
And then what's the feeling like, I guess, when you spend so much time on a case, you bring someone to justice, they are found guilty? What do you do when you're sitting there? What feeling do you have inside of you?
I just felt bad for the family all along, and for those girls, what happened to them. They had their whole lives ahead of them, and they were just really good people, and they were taken for really. no reason. And I have daughters myself, so to me that, it's like wow. And then just that long trial, just the long waiting period for that family to finally get delayed justice. And people throw around the word closure, but I don't know if there can ever be closure. But there can be answers and there can be justice. But he had no remorse, which is very troubling to me.
Yeah, you wrote or you included in the book his statement, and I mean, that was jarring to read. I can't imagine sitting there listening to him say that. Why now? Why did you write the book now? What was that experience like reliving this investigation?
Well, I started on this book back in 2017. There was a decision by the department to cut the cold case squad and basically dismantle it in late 2016, early 2017 due to budget cuts. And I was angry because I thought, we had done everything. We were an elite team and we were firing on all cylinders, delivering 12 to 15 cold case arrests back to the 70s. We had just taken down a serial killer, and to just kind of discard us like trash and just say, hey, you're going to go away. To me, that hurt, and so I'm like, I have to tell the world about this case, and it blossomed into why it was the poster child of why cold cases matter, because we cannot forget about these victims.
And do you think that that will be a wake up call to the Phoenix Police Department or other police departments in the rest of the country?
Yeah, I hope so. That's I have an advocacy and consulting, and I try to help with parents of murdered children. I'm a volunteer. So I really hope that there is some pressure to adequately staff these cold case squads. And it's not just cold case homicide, it's cold case missing persons, it's cold case sex crimes. These are important cases. And yes, it's important to have community relations type detectives, they call them. But it's more important to solve murders and solve sexual assaults and solve missing persons, to me, in my opinion. So I hope we get our priorities straight in law enforcement, and we've kind of drifted off task, I think.
And the book is out now, October 7th, Chasing Down the Zombie Hunter. Where can people find it?
It's on Simon and Schuster. It's on Amazon, Target, Walmart. My agent, One Idea Books. It's on about Barnes and Noble. It's pretty much everywhere. Available on audiobook and Kindle on that day. It's pre-ordered now until the 7th. Um, so
And we just only scratched the surface here about your 3.5 year investigation into chasing this zombie hunter, finding him, and ultimately bringing him to justice. Sergeant Troy Hillman, big congrats to you on the book. Thank you so much for joining me.
thank you, Brittany. I appreciate you. It was an honor.